Everyone, this is another part of my series about the Israel and Arab conflict. I finished my previous part with the independence war of Israel in 1948. Please remember it was won by Israel, but in a very high price, 6,000 casualties, which was 1% of the Jewish population at the time in Israel. The Arabs also paid a high price in this war, and in 1949 a ceasefire agreement was signed, which the border of Israel was drawn in that agreement, and it being called the Green Line Agreement because it was drawn in green. Now, here I have a map of Israel after the war and with this agreement, and please see that's 40 kilometers. This is 40 kilometers. So Israel is a very small country, by all means. For my American viewers, it's about the size of the state of Maine, and 17 kilometers is here. Between the border and the Mediterranean Sea. This is the Mediterranean Sea here, okay? And you need to remember that Israel was without the Sinai Peninsula, which is here, or here, and the Gaza Strip here in the south. This is the south border of Israel. And this was occupied, of course, by Egypt. Egypt occupied Sinai and the Gaza Strip back then. And in the north, the Golan Heights were held by Syria. In the east, the West Bank, Judea and Samaria was occupied by the Kingdom of Jordan, while the ancient city of Jerusalem was divided into two parts. The western part, the new city of Jerusalem, was held by Israel, while the old city was held by Jordan. This is, of course, the Lebanon border in the north. So, this is the map, and a very important fact to consider. Because after this bloody war, while the Arab lost the war, and the world, with the Western Bloc and the Eastern Bloc alike, and of course the UN recognized Israel as a state in these borders, while the Arab world, the Arab countries, refused to recognize the state of Israel, refused to recognize it. They wanted, of course, its destruction, and they waited for what was then called the second round. As well as you need to consider it again, I think it's a very important fact, Israel has at that time no occupied territories as you might consider today. A small state with neighboring enemies. This is surrounded by enemies all around. If you talk about Israel today, please remember these facts. I'm speaking about the history and the origin of the conflict, and it's very important to consider it. As before, the Arabs world and the Palestinians among them refused to make any compromise with Israel, and wish for its destruction. Repeat it again and again because this is a main point, a very important point to consider. And this is the way Israel felt at that time, and it wasn't just a feeling. Israel, after the war, had many economic problems. It mainly had to deal with large waves of immigration, Jewish immigration from from Europe, the Jewish refugees from the Holocaust, and from the Arab world. The Arab countries treat severely the Jews in their countries, and the Jews had to flee the countries to Israel. They become sort of refugees, and until today, even though of course the demands from Israel is to mainly sometimes I talk about it. I even talked about it before, and I will talk about it later. Some justification, of course, some justification about make a compromise with the refugees and compensation. The Arab immigrants or refugees, the Jews, until today haven't received any compensation for their homes or for the assets they left in the Arab countries. Okay, now what next? Just a minute. Yes, the Palestinian refugees after the war tried again and again to cross the borders, sometimes to make a living, and sometimes to sabotage the Israeli towns and villages. It's unprotected. They were, of course, unprotected borders at that time, long borders here and in the Gaza Strip, in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. Now, it was mainly Egypt after a military coup led by General Gamal Abdel Nasser that trained Palestinians in order to become terrorists and to cross the border and to put bombs in Israel. And after several successful attempts, Nasser, as one of the leaders of the Third World back then, decided to escalate the situation, and in 1956 he closed the Tiran Strait, which prevented Israeli ships to sail to Asia in the south. This is Eilat seaport here in the south, and the trades are somewhere here. There's no, don't have map here, and it was blocked here. So a blockade was considered by Israel as a threat to its existence, and it decided secretly to cooperate with France and Britain and to invade Sinai in order to change the balance of power in the region. While Israel successfully occupy Sinai Peninsula, Britain and France failed to reach their target to occupy the Suez Canal. And after a joint threat by the United States and the Soviet Union, all parties had to back down and withdraw for the occupied territories. Israel agreed to that, but only after a joint promise from all parties that the Tiran Straits will stay open for civilian Israeli ships. And the Sinai Peninsula would demilitarize, no military there and no terrorists there on the borders. And a UN peacekeeping force will stay there to keep the peace, so to speak. From 1956 until 1967, about that, Israel became much more relaxed. Its economy stabilized, its population grew fast, and its democracy blossomed. If you compare it to the Arab neighbors, flourish democracy. But still, the threat was there. The Arab countries continue to refuse to nationalize the Palestinian refugees in their territories, and it's of course a very big problem. Now, in the late 50s, Egypt recruited former Nazi scientists, in order to obtain strategic missiles force against Israel. And in the north, Syria tried to divert the origin of the Jordan River, which provide Israel its water supply. Israel decided to do two things. It tried to acquire a nuclear capability in order to deter the Arab world from trying to destroy and annihilate the small state. Now, Israel was not and is not willing to use this capability unless it will seemingly would face annihilation. As in the Cold War, it's a deterrence weapon only that Israel don't want to use. As a developed democracy, Israel knows its responsibility in that sense. And that being said, it's of course the opposite of what Iran is now representing today in that matter. They are threatening, of course, Israel and the world. Okay, I will finish this video now, and of course later will be another part I will do later.